I suppose if there was anything that guided where we were going, it was that sense of what stories had they to tell, because I like that idea, working in youth arts, I like that idea that people are interesting. So I suppose a starting point for me would be you are interesting. So the stories they have to tell, what they think, what they observe, is interesting.
Well, some of them came from Kerry, and some from the County Clare, Dublin, Wicklow, Donegal, and some from Old Kildare. Some from a land across the sea, from Boston and New York. And the boys who played the black and tans were the boys from County Cork. We are the boys from Cork City, and we have stories to tell.
Stories about our great-grandparents that lived in Cork City in 1916.
That's 100 years ago.
These are my great-grandparents. This is Jack Coveney, and this is a picture of Kitty Crosby. Jack Coveney and Kitty Crosby both worked in the British Army in World War I. This is the picture of the nurses in aid tending the wounded soldiers. This is a picture of Jack Coveney when he was just about to go into the war.
My great-grandparent is Moses. He lives in Nigeria and he's a trader.
This is my great-granddad Peter, and this is my great-grandmother Anna. They were like farmers in Latvia, I think it was like Kuldiga, like in Latvia. And when they left school, it was they were 14, both, like when they left school.
My great-grandfather's name is James Madigan, and my great-grandmother's name is Margaret Madigan, and they were a housewife and a Garda. When they met, they were introduced by someone, like, we didn't know their name, but they left school at 14 years and 16 years old, and their house was down in the city centre by Captain America's.
This is Jamie's picture, but he's out today, and this is mine. That I have 4 grandparents that their names are Sheila and Gerald, who are on my dad's side, and Mary and Pat, who are on my mum's side. They left school at 6. Mary left school at 10, Sheila left school at 16, Pat left school at 16, and Gerald left school at 16. Sheila was a secretary, Mary was a cleaner in the Opera House, Gerald was a bus driver, and Pat was in the board of management in the Opera House, and he was also taking tickets in the Opera House. This is Mary, one of them, who has died in 2010.
I want you to tell me. I did a project a number of years ago with primary school children. I remember thinking, how do you access, I suppose, a creative space with young people? And I thought, if you have something, it is useful, a prop. And literally, I like that idea of, because that's what drama is, it's stepping into somebody else's shoes. So I said, let's be really literal about it and physically have a pair of shoes. Okay, so he was a doctor, but he was in the Irish Volunteers.
And he also played hurling.
The character's politics was really strongly came from the group. So they sort of really weren't that interested in him being actively involved in terms of fighting, even though he was an Irish volunteer. So it was very interesting to see where their preferences were very clear, and you sort of think, okay, let's take that, let's run with that. Did he have a brother?
Yes.
Who? Hang on, let's come over here. Yeah.
And he was 36 years old, and
He moved out of Voice Street.
This is my nan, Frida Bennett, and she worked as a nursery gardener. And her husband's and my granddad's name was Philip John Mudd, and he worked as a steel contractor, and they both lived in England.
This is my great-granddad. He's called Michael O'Keefe. He's married to, I think, Jenny O'Keefe. He was a carpenter and Jenny was a dressmaker. My other great-grandparents' names were May O'Keefe, she worked in an office, and John O'Keefe, he worked as a bookkeeper. They left school at 12 to 13, all of them. They were all from Cork.
My great-grandmom's name was Hattie, and I think my mom's granddad also started with a H, but I don't fully know. But I know that my great-granddad's job was a mason, and my great-grandmom was a housewife. And my great-grandmom's side, they're both from Cageland or Cageland. I'm not sure how to say it. I also know that their house was very small. I think it might have been a flat. They had, I think, 2 or 3 kids. And on my great-granddad's side, they were both from Africa, Nigeria.
This is my grandfather, Fidelis, and this is my grandmother, Eunice, and they live in Nigeria, East, and they left school at 25 and 16, and they were traders and farmers.
So this is my great-grandfather, Christopher Long, and he was born in 1906, and he left school when he was 14 years old in 1920, and he worked as a barman, but after that he worked as a soldier, and he died in 1955 at the age of 49 on his birthday. And my great-grandmother's name was Kathleen Long, and she was born in 1910, and she left school in 1924 at the age of 14 as well, and she worked in Sunbeam, the factory, and she died when she was 76 in 1986.
I do a thing called fast pictures, where you put about 6 kids on the floor at the same time. Everyone else is sitting as in an audience. I say go. They run really fast into the space. They all take a really big shape. They have to be touching at least one other person, and they freeze. So it's all random. So it's not about choice. And really what it makes them do is it makes them work very physically in a very big way, sometimes in an abstract way. And it stops them working primarily from story. So they just go on impulse, and then they look and say, how do you read it?
Between the sessions, I suppose we were doing an awful lot of work on the 1916 Rising. They were doing a project as well on the burning of Cork, which was a couple of years afterwards. So they were finding out an awful lot of information about it, the different armies, the different things that were happening around the country. But I suppose with this project, the fact that it was localised and it was what their great-grandparents or what their family members were at the time, I suppose it made it more personal for them.
My great-granddad's name was Patrick. He left school at the age of 14 and he was a builder.
And my great-grandparents' names were Bridget and Dennis, and they rarely went to school, and they lived in Toker in Cork. And Dennis used to be a sailor, and Bridget was a housewife. And as you can see in my picture, they lived in a trailer.
This is my great-grandparent, Samuel, and he's a sailor, and I got my name from him, and his wife is a Dozy, and she was a homemaker, and Samuel's brother was a goldsmith, and Dozy's brother was a carpenter, and they both lived in Nigeria.
And this is my great-grandfather, and his name is Alex. He left school at 16. He lived in Ukraine, Russia, and Estonia. He moved like houses, so he moved like from different country to country. He worked as a miner in, I don't know which country he worked in, but I know he worked as a miner.
My great-grandparents' name is Maureen. She left school at the age of 16. She worked as a gynecologist. She lived in Gruanabraha, I'm not sure what number.